Good morning. Today is March 1st, 2021. It's sometime after 9 o'clock, and we're going to talk about the name of God yet again, because I think that this is really the message that I have to put forward. The Jews are going to come after. They're going to be they're going to understand, they're going to be gathered, they're going to see at the fullness of the Gentiles. I don't believe the church is going to be here for their coming to understand, because our rapture will be the event that reveals to them that we were right and that they need to come to Jesus. And only 10% of them will, because in Isaiah 6, God says, I'll save 10%. There's going to be a huge, huge loss. And when we think about that loss, we have to remember that God knows who's who. He knows who wants Him, who wants what He has created, who desires to live right, and He knows who doesn't. And we don't. We don't know who is who. We have no clue. The wheat and the tares. Do you think the wheat knows the tare from the wheat? No. They're just plants. They grow next to each other. We don't know. We have to love everyone as though they're our brothers and sisters. And if God shows us otherwise, so be it. It's His call. He knows who they are. This is His creation. We don't get to tell Him how to run His creation. What we're hoping for is that while we're out sharing the gospel, that one of His children realizes they're a child of God and they need to get right with God. The rest of this will just fall on deaf ears and blind eyes. They don't want to know, they don't care, and we'll get a response from them that's pretty much the same. I don't care. Go do whatever you're going to do, but I don't want any part of it. And that's going to be the response from the wicked of the world. But that doesn't mean we stop talking. That doesn't mean we stop evangelizing. We're to do that right to the very end. So, I know that, or I believe, that I will not be here to see the Jewish people gathered together, and I mean gathered together in thought, in understanding, back to the Lord, gathered back to Him, restored. I don't believe I'll be here to see that. I think that what they'll see will happen after I'm gone, and because I plan on leaving at the rapture with everyone else. And I believe that's verified in Isaiah 49, because in that verse there is. He says, though Israel be not gathered, still I will be glorious in the eyes of my Lord. And to be glorious is to be glorified, and we get glorified bodies. So even though Israel isn't gathered, even though Israel doesn't have an understanding, isn't restored, they will be by this preaching and others when we're raptured. That'll be the moment. But we won't see it because we'll be gone. Then they'll come to the Lord. The fullness of the Gentiles. When the church is full of all of its Gentiles, we don't need any more. Off we will go. So, this board. I was talking with a friend in California, and we started laughing about some things, and Magnum Force was a Clint Eastwood movie. And there's some interesting things about that movie. First of all, what's the difference between a good man and just a man? See, in Magnum Force, there's some catch lines, some quotes that have been around for a long, long time. A lot of people don't know them because they're too young, but one of them was the detective, the lieutenant, telling Dirty Harry, and Dirty Harry's in a number of different movies. I couldn't even count them all, but Clint Eastwood made a career on Dirty Harry, amongst other things. So, Harry Callahan's being told by the lieutenant, you gotta A man's got to know his limitations. A man's got to know his limitations. And mankind needs to know its limitations. We're not God. We never have been God. Satan has told us that we could be God. You know, you'll be like God. Well, being like God isn't being God. And ultimately, God will have his say. And that's what the tribulation and that's what the end times are all about. God is about to have his say. And you don't want to be on the wrong side of that. So, that's just a man. What's a good man? The other quote in there is, a good man knows his limitations. He knows he's not God. He knows he has to step in line with what God is doing. And that's what good men and women are doing throughout the world as Christians. We've realized that God is God, there is no other God, and that he's the God of the Bible, whose son is Jesus Christ. I mean, the rest of the gospel. I'm not going to spell it out for you. It's out there everywhere. You know what you need to do. You need to come to Jesus. Whosoever calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. So, what is the name of the Lord? Well, Jesus is a name higher than any other name. So that's the one you should call. But what is the name of the Lord in the Old Testament? The one the Jews should venerate, the one the Jews should know, except it's been hidden from them by their rabbis, by the very people they go to seeking after God. These men have hidden his name so that the people can't say it. That's just ridiculous. Ridiculous. Well, what time is it? Let's see what time it is. Because I got to get into some pictures on this phone. 9/27, March 1st. So, it's terrible that they would do that. Let's take a look at some things. First of all, we'll get rid of a good man versus a man, because we know what that's about. And knowing one's limitations, we've already talked about that. I versus J. What is that? Well, right here we have a photocopy of the Geneva Bible from 1560. Okay? And you can probably get a freeze frame on that. But I'll show you something here. Down here at the bottom, well, and this is Psalm 68. And in Psalm 68 verse 4 it says, "Sing unto God, sing praises unto his name, exalt him that rideth upon the heavens in his name." And then it says, I-A-H. I-A-H. Like the ending of all those Jewish names, Hezekiah, Zechariah, Adoniah, Isaiah. And rejoice before him. All right, so there we are. There's 4. There's Yah. There's rejoice. Now we know these words. Okay, look at the next ones. Maybe we'll go up. We'll find another spot on this. But rejoice, R-E-I-O-Y. So there is a Y for the Y sound, but it's not a Y sound. It's just rejoice. It's a J sound. The Y is a J sound, and the I is a J sound. Rejoice. Well, I had to do a break there, but I'm back at it again. So here we are, Psalm 68, verse 4. And then we'll go down to verse 5. He is a father to the fatherless and a judge, I-U-D-G-E, judge of the widows. What's a judge? Oh, he's a judge. J-U-D-J. He's a judge of the widows. Okay? I is the J sound. But in 1560, they weren't using the letter J. They certainly were using the sound, the phonetic J, because it's a judge. And a judge knows what a judge is. In the courtroom, you have a judge, a bailiff, all these different people. Do you think they changed the pronunciation of the word? Or do you think they just developed, hey, let's make this letter the sound for that J. Let's make that the letter that represents that sound. The sounds, the phonetics, the language has always been there. Written language comes after spoken language. And they make the written language match the spoken language. It's not that Jesus, spelled with an I, sounded Jesus. That I always had a J sound. Jesus was always Jesus. It's just that it was spelled with an I, and people thought, oh, that's Jesus. It's not. It's the J sound. Because when they used that I and they spelled it with an I, they themselves knew that I represented the sound of a J. Just like that I-U-D-G-E-S, judges. It's not judges, it's not Jesus, it's judges and Jesus. Jesus. That's the pronunciation of the name. The spelling of using an I, because the Greeks didn't have a J. And the English didn't have a J until they decided, you know what, we're going to make this I into a J so that we can have that sound. But the interesting part here, and that's just a little bit about Jesus, the interesting part, and you can go back and freeze frame this and look at it again, is the IAH in Psalm 68. Of course, Psalm 68 is pretty old. Certainly long before 300 BC. Exalt him that rideth upon the heavens in his name, Yah, I-A-H. Except that Yah isn't Yah. It's I-A-H, but we know that that I represents the same sound as the I in judge, so it's Jah. Psalm 68 says his name is Jah. What's wrong? What's wrong with all this? Well, what's wrong is that somewhere around 500 BC, the rabbis came out of Babylon and changed everything. The Jewish religion didn't return from Babylon. Babylonian Talmudism came out of Babylon. This name's been lost forever, such that even these men who did this translation didn't know it. Now in 300 something, IAH was a false god. He was, hang on a second, he was this guy. He was this guy, Osiris Yah. Okay? Osiris IAH. 600 to 300 BC. The Egyptians had a god with that name. It's an Egyptian moon god. Hopefully you can see these things, at least enough that you can say, you know what, I'm going to Google those words and go look for it myself and verify what it is that I'm saying. Another interesting thing about this is that HAYAH, I-Yah, versus Iyah, or I-A-Yah, Iyah versus HAYAH. The sun, Jesus, versus the moon, HAYAH, Osiris. Good versus evil. Faith versus fear. Isn't that everything? Aren't we told that Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy. But he can't. He can't, because greater is Christ who is in us than he who is in the world. So what is this all about? Satan can only do what God allows him to do, and our faith is being tested. Will we stand, knowing God stands with us? Psalm 91, that because we know his name, we're covered in his feathers, we're protected, that 1,000 could fall at our side, even 10,000, and it wouldn't come near us. We would simply stand and see the destruction of the wicked. Are we going to truly believe that and do those things and show our faith? Or are we going to be in fear? It's interesting that psychology, brought forth by a man named Freud, who essentially overdosed his best friend on cocaine and had thoughts about infantile sexuality, as if infants can have a sexuality. The man was sick, and he created psychology, and you want me to follow that guy? You've got to be out of your mind. It's interesting that every phobia, every phobia ends in IA. Well, maybe not every one of them. And then psychological illnesses end in IA, like schizophrenia, phobia. Why is that? Because they're paying homage to their god, Osiris. Osiris, not Aya. Theirs is the false god, Aya. Hey, Yod, hey. Hey, Yod, hey. H 1961. That is the true name of God as given to Moses, and it is pronounced HAYAH. And there's a reason I know that, because it's certainly not pronounced Iyah, which is all satanic. How many are righteous in the world? How many? None. No, not one. The only righteous people in the world have been made righteous through the blood of Christ. So when these people come and they talk about land masses and they talk about fears, phobias, iyas, they design everything to give homage to their god, Osiris, the false god. Rusya, where the Russians live. Russia. Britannia. Grecia, Greece, Britain, Russia. Persia, Persia. United States? America? What? That don't apply over here in America. Sure it does. Because we live under the auspices, under the control of the District of Columbia. We got a problem here. We've always had a problem here. We've never been ruled by righteous people. They even named everything after their gods. These are demonic areas. Persia and Greece are written of in the Bible as having princes, demonic powers over them. And as soon as I find that picture, I'll let you know. Daniel 10:20. See if I can get this up here. Then said he, Knowest from wherefore I come unto thee. I return to fight with the prince of Persia and the prince of Grecia. If the angel that came to Daniel was of God, which we know he was, and he was fighting with a prince of Persia, then the prince of Persia is a demonic power over an area named Persia. And they named that area for that demonic power, IA, after their false god. This is what we're talking about. good versus evil. It's everywhere. You can see it everywhere. And it also brings validation back to this name because Satan wants to be like the Most High. He's even tried to replicate God's name, but God won't allow that. This name, HAYAH, HAYAH, and HAYAH, Columbia, has been around since 600 BC. But the name HAYAH has been around much longer. See, Satan tries to copy, tries to mimic. That's what an antichrist is. It's in place of, a copy of, a false Christ. These are false gods. That 1560 Geneva Bible shows us how this name has been inserted, and people say, oh, God's name is Yah. Well, they're not even saying it right. When you look at the scripture for this in Psalm 68, what you have is this. Okay? You have just this portion, Yah, Yod, He. Okay? But Psalm 68 says something completely different. I'm going to show that to you in a second. Come on now. Okay. So there we have Psalm 68, Blue Letter Bible. And we come to Psalm 68, and that's what it is in the Hebrew. This is the word for Yah, but it has, I believe that's the bet. Yod, He. Biyah. It's Biyah. Okay? It's not even Yah as they translated it. They're saying that Yah, Yod He, is the same as this word here, Yod He. It's Bi Yod He. It's not even translated properly. Bi Yod He is Biyah. Now we're going to talk about Disney. Biyah. From H3050, which they say is Yah, even Blue Letter Bible says it's Yah, but it's not. It's Biyah. So written in the actual script is the word Biyah that is God's name. That's interesting, especially when you take a look at Disney. Because Disney has this girl, and she is Be Yod He. She is Biyah. That's her name. That's her character name. This girl's name is Isabella Soares. I can't think of it. It's Isabella for sure. And Disney has put that young lady forward as Biyah, as an antichrist, as an anti-God, because we know that Psalm 68 says that's the name of God. But that name right there was given to a character on a Disney show, and she's a creator and a writer and an artist. Isn't that what God does? He creates. It is written. He writes. Disney, Disney, Disney. Good Lord. Have they influenced the world? If I were the Jewish people, and that show was on our national TV, and they were letting that play in their country, defying Psalm 68, allowing this person to refer to themselves as Be Yod He, when Be Yod He is the word in Psalm 68 that refers to God, I think I'd have an issue with Disney. I think I'd start looking at the rest of the stuff that company puts out. I think as a country, as a people, the Jewish people would say, whoa, wait a second. Who's running the show out there? And then I think they should say, whoa, wait a second. Who's running the show in the synagogue? These are the Talmudites. These are the ones who preach the Talmud. This is not your Torah. This is not your prophets. They're not giving you the truth. and you should be outraged. Many of you will just go, well, heck, that's the way it is. It's, we've been doing this a long time. It's tradition. As Topol said in Fiddler on the Roof. Tradition! Well, tradition isn't what's right. God's word, God's written word is what's right. And when you veer from that, you end up with all kinds of stuff. And they veered. Ezekiel 20 verse 8. Yah, Ayah. Yah versus Ayah. People have been saying Yah for the longest time, or Jah. They say now that the rabbis say HAYAH is the name of God. Yah is the name of God. HAYAH is the name of God. There's a guy out there who says that it's Ayah, but he doesn't pronounce it that way. He says it's HAYAH. HAYAH. What are you thinking? Come on. HAYAH. Ahaya, Asher, Ahaya? No. Yahovah, Jehovah, Yahweh? None of those were given to Moses. What was given to Moses was Hey, Yod, Hey. And it was referred to in the Strong's as 1961. This is all in the rest of my channel. This is all these things. Why are you worshiping false gods? Why are you allowing the name of God according to Psalm 68 to be blasphemed by a show called Bia? By this word, which refers to the name of God, has been allowed to be used in a Disney production. That's a Jezebel spirit right there. In fact, the girl's name is Isabel, which is how the Jews pronounce Jezebel. And if your name's Isabel, it's not personal, okay? It's not. Just know that though there are people who have that name who actually live up to that spirit. You could be a very sweet Christian, loving girl with the name of Isabel, and it'd be just fine. That's not what this is about. However, that show is a problem. I think I've covered all of it. Now, this is an expo marker. I don't know that this can do what it does, but it seems to be working okay. But there's a marker bigger, better, badder than that, and I think I'm going to show that clip at the end and you'll understand why. I said that the powers of Hollywood and the murmurings they get from the demons about, here, write this story, and they give inspiration. Okay, Hollywood's been given inspiration by demons. In fact, they've sought it out through seances and things like that. And so if they're going to write stuff, they write it about particular people to mock God. They mock people, and I've said, well, that's what they're doing. So Cars 2, Mater's a tow truck. He's a big yokel. That definitely fits me, especially since in 2009 I was dressing up in a tow truck uniform because that was my job. But I would wear that into the junkyard and then do videos. And this next scene is me, and I'm having a ball. I'm just having fun. But I gotta know my limitations too. I don't have any. You know why? Because all things are possible with God. Whatever He decides I'm going to do, I'll do. Whatever He gives me power to do, I'll do. That's my limitation. I have to wait on Him. I can't do anything of my own accord. Jesus came and said, I came to do the Father's will. Everyone since then who is a brother, a sister with Christ, adopted into the family, comes to do the will of the Father. They said that, hey, your mother and your brothers are here. And He's like, who are my mother and my brothers? These here who do the will of my Father are my brothers and sisters. So we're all sent here to do that. We can do nothing more than that. This is God's world. We just simply do what He tells us when He tells us, the power that He has given us to do it. And right now, this is the maximum I get to do with this little expo marker. But in 2009, I'm using a different marker and I'm saying different things and I'm outing the Antichrist and I'm doing all of that. And then along comes 2011 and it's Cars 2, and their Cars 2 character looks a lot like me in that junkyard. Go watch that video. Mater outs the villain. Mater's a tow truck. I drive a tow truck. Mater's AAA AAA affiliated. I drove for AAA. There's a lot there. And I believe that one day people will realize, wow, what a crazy story this guy has. And it's not a story, it's my life. It's a living, breathing life. It just happens that that's how God works. Don't ask me how it happens. I was just born into it. It is what it is, and I can't change it, and I wouldn't, because this is the life God gave me. It's what he had in mind for me. Jeremiah 29:11, I have a plan for you, for good and not for evil. That's for all who call upon his name. Everyone can apply that to their lives, that God has a plan for good and not for evil for them. Psalm 91, because I know his name, because I make his name known, he will protect me. If they knew about who I was and who I would be in 2009, so much so to make a movie, a kids movie, mocking this position that I would have at some point, if that's the case, then I must be protected. I know that I am. I know that we all are. Greater is he that is in us. But sometimes it needs to be shown at a different level and not just told us in the, well, it says it in the Bible, so I believe it. You know what? We need our faith encouraged, emboldened, brought forth in greater number. And I believe that's what this whole thing that I'm doing is all about. Now, it is what it is. You know, you can do the research yourself and find these things out. Many people won't. Number one, they won't hear it because nobody will go tell them. And the other thing is they won't care. They're too busy. They don't have time for God. The Jewish people don't have time for the God that runs the universe, even though they're married to him. But some of the Jewish people do. Some people who are Jewish still long to know God, the one true living God, the God who got them out of Egypt, the God who sent Moses, the God who Moses said, tell them that I am hath sent me unto you. Tell the children of Israel, HAYAH sent me unto you. And when he said those words, and he told them that the name, those Jews in Egypt recognized that name. Why don't you? Why don't you recognize the name? Because you've been lied to for 2,500 years. 2,500 years the Talmud has been propagated as your faith when it's not. 2,500 years. Jeremiah 2:32, you have forgotten my name, days without number. God knows you've forgotten, but it's time for you to remember. It's time for you to have his name restored unto you. The name of the Father unto his children. This is being restored. Does that make me the Elijah type? I think a lot of things make me the Elijah type. But it doesn't matter whether I am or I'm not. What matters is whether or not you see and know the one true living God. That's what he wants. The messenger? Pshaw, who cares about the messenger? It's the message that is the difference. It's the message. There's the message. The name of God has been lost, and you don't care. When will you start caring? God, I hope you change your mind. Lord Jesus, change your mind. Because evil is coming upon this world, and God has created it. He is the creator of the waster that is coming, because you will not listen. Kiss the Son, that it may go well for you. Psalm 2. You need to respect the Son, that the Father would be pleased. I think that's all I got to say today. God bless and take care. I'll put those pictures on the end. I'll just tack them all on there so you can freeze frame and look at them and think about it. Yeah, I think that's all. Take care. Bye.
People are going to need the information. People are definitely going to need the information. You know what I got? I got me a Magnum 44. Most powerful marker in the world. Think it's going to be good enough? Well, do you, punk?